Brief scene. Dramatic silence. Drone shots of Tel Aviv at night. Flickering CCTV footage. In the shadows of the city, a secret operation was unfolding. He didn't know he was being watched. He didn't know every word, every step, every glance was being logged. Midnight Watch, Operation Codename, Project Glasshouse. Following months of surveillance, Shin Bet finally moved forward. The target, Colonel X, the suspected double agent embedded deep within Israel's defense sector. This wasn't just about arresting a man. It was about untangling a network, and doing it without causing diplomatic shockwaves. The operation had a name, Project Glasshouse, because everything the suspect did was now made of glass. Transparent, traceable, fragile. The plan was simple. Wait until his next meeting with his handler. Gather conclusive physical evidence. Isolate him from any escape route, physical or digital. Extract without public attention. But nothing in espionage is ever simple. The final week, pressure builds. It was late September. Colonel X was scheduled to attend a private briefing at a classified defense innovation center near Beersheba. What his superiors didn't know was that he was carrying a microdrive disguised within his key fob. The information? Early-stage cyber countermeasures being developed for Israel's Iron Dome. At the same time, a Russian diplomat, known intelligence linked, flew in from Cyprus for cultural meetings. It was time. If they waited longer, the leak would lead Israeli soil. If they moved too soon, they'd tip the rest of the network. The arrest, quiet, brutal, precise. At 02:37 a.m., a convoy of unmarked black SUVs surrounded a gated compound on the outskirts of Herzliya. Colonel X had returned from the supposed briefing, unaware that his encrypted phone had already been cloned and compromised. He was alone. No guards, no escape, just silence. A small team of Shin Bet special operatives dressed in civilian clothing entered his villa. No announcement, no warrant, just precision. "You're coming with us," one agent said. "Ask no questions, you already know why." He didn't resist. Not out of compliance, but because he knew the game was over. The interrogation begins. Room 428. The Shin Bet's central interrogation facility, underground and shielded, was unlike anything Colonel X had faced. There were no bright lights, no yelling. Only cold, clinical questions. Hours and hours of methodical, psychological pressure. They didn't ask if he was a spy. They asked when he had started. Who else was involved? What Moscow promised him? At first, silence. Then denial. Then cracks. He began to correct minor details, correcting an interrogator's wrong assumption about a location, clarifying a timeline. And with each correction, the Shin Bet smiled. Because in espionage, correction is confession. Parallel pressure, diplomatic chaos. While Colonel X was being interrogated, another operation was unfolding, this time at the Russian consulate. Israeli diplomats were engaged in quiet talks. No accusations, no formal charges. But the message was clear. We know what you've done. We're watching, and we won't make a public scene unless you make us. Russia, of course, denied everything. The diplomat in question was recalled. Officially for health reasons, unofficially evacuated before arrest. Israel knew they couldn't afford an international scandal. So they chose containment over exposure, but they froze several intelligence liaisons, revoked diplomatic access, and quietly expelled multiple suspected Russian-linked businessmen. It wasn't war. It was a controlled burn. The spy network unfolds. Colonel X eventually gave names. Not all, but enough. Through weeks of interrogation, pieces of the network came into view. A translator working in the Ministry of Energy, a cybersecurity contractor with dual citizenship, A Russian-Israeli academic feeding tech analysis through encrypted emails. A Mossad retiree unknowingly manipulated into providing structural information. Each layer revealed just how embedded Moscow had become, not with tanks or guns, but with relationships. A. The disinformation strategy. Rather than shutting everything down, Israel made a bold choice. They began to use Colonel X. They fed him partial truths, controlled leaks, and designed traps. He was allowed to send one final message to his Moscow contact. What the Russians didn't know was that message contained a traceable payload and false intelligence that would lead them to a dead end. For weeks afterward, Israel monitored Russian reaction, and what they saw confirmed everything. Moscow believed the intel was real, and they were still listening. Cliffhanger ending to episode 2. Colonel X sat alone in his holding cell. He had cooperated, but only partially. The network had been exposed, but not destroyed. And the Russians had withdrawn, but not disappeared. The Shin Bet knew this was only the first battle. Because in the world of modern espionage, the enemy doesn't retreat. They adapt. In episode 3, we explore ... the aftermath of the bust, Israel's internal debates over releasing or trading Colonel X, the global intelligence fallout, and whether the Russians had planted a second double agent, hiding even deeper